Hey guys, today I'm going to show you an easy way of how to forge a simple rebar knife. Now I am using 1/2-inch rebar for this particular project, but you could use any size bigger, it doesn't really matter, just as long as it's not like 3 inches thick. Now when you first start forging, you really just want to go 1 to 2 inches back and just start flattening it out. You can go a little bit farther, it really depends on how long you want the blade, but I like to keep it as small as possible when I first begin so I can really stretch out the blade. It makes it look better and it really conserves the materials. Now from here you really just want to start stretching out the blade. You can start forging the tip, I do here in a second, but you don't have to do that for a little while. You're really just kind of flattening it out right now and just spacing it out as much as you possibly can. Just like right here, I'm starting to forge the tip. I like to do it a little early on just because I think it looks a little better in the end, but you can really do it whenever you want. It's really just personal preference. And from here, you really just start drawing out the blade. You can go farther back if you want a longer blade, but I'm just making a kind of a camp knife or ranch knife, if you will. So the blade really doesn't need to be that long, but you could just follow these same directions and just make it longer and make a dagger. Just really whatever you want, but I really want a smaller blade, so I'm not going back that far. And once you get the blade pretty drawn out, like I have it right here, you really want to start being conscious of the shoulders of the blade. It really just makes it look better. The shoulders are where the blade meets the handle, so it would be right where like the rebar notches stop on this particular knife. So you really want to avoid hitting the rebar notches as much as you can and really just hit the blade, because it just makes it 100% better when it comes to looks. And right here, I'm really just shaping up the profile of my blade. I kind of wanted to go to a dropped spine, a kind of curved spine, and a pretty wide blade. But again, just personal preference. I don't know how you like your blades. So just kind of, from here, just kind of shaping up the blade, hitting the top, kind of getting the tip dropped as much as you can. It makes it easier when you start grinding on it or filing, whatever you have. And yeah, just flatten it out. Make sure you're conscious of your shoulders so that you don't hit behind the blade. I did a few times, but just as long as you don't do it too much. And right here, I'm just really trying to define the transition from handle to blade right here. So what you can do is just shed it on your anvil and make a curve on the very angle of your anvil. Just hit it like that so that it really just makes it to where your finger fits in there better and just looks better all around, and it makes it feel better in your hand. And right here, I'm just kind of going down to the very fine details of the knife, just getting it how I really want it, making sure that the blade aligns up with the handle, just making sure everything's straight, getting your tip dropped, and getting the back and front of the blade how you want it. So again, personal preference, how you want everything. I probably should not have used this particular anvil for the last part because my anvil does have cracks and divots on the face of it. This doesn't matter if you're doing big things or at the beginning of projects, but it does matter at the very end of projects like this. So if you really want a really pretty knife, you should probably switch to like an anvil with a really smooth face. But if it doesn't really matter how pretty the knife is to you, then it doesn't really matter. It can still look pretty good at the end. It will just have cracks and stuff, and it'll be harder to polish the knife all around. And now you can cut the knife. I use an angle grinder, but you can really use whatever you want. I just measured my hand from the bottom of the blade to the bottom of my hand and left like an inch space. And I do apologize, it got dark, so I'll try and explain what I'm doing as best as I can. But really now what I'm doing, I'm just shaping the handle. You really want to be very careful when doing this because the handle is really what really brings out the knife. If nothing else, you really want to have a pretty handle. And so just putting it on the horn of my anvil, just very light hits with the hammer, just going down. I'm holding it by the blade. You probably can't see, but I'm holding it by the blade with my tongs, just hitting the handle down, getting a curved handle. I want the blade to be kind of dipped down in front of the handle, really. So, but again, personal preference. And now I'm just really going in one last time and shaping everything up, making sure that my blade aligns with my handle, that my shoulders are even, and that all transitions just look really good. Making sure that I'm using my wire brush when I develop scale so that I don't have cracks in my blade. So yeah, just however you want it, just getting it all squared up and tidy, just making sure everything is straight. And right now I'm just punching my initials into the blade. If you do have punches laying around, what I do is I just set my blade on my anvil like this, and I pick up the punches with pliers. They do have a spring lock thing that you can put the punches in, but it really doesn't always land even, so I just pick them up with pliers and set them on there and hit them with a light hammer like this. And after if you do decide to put your initials in it, you will have to go back and square up the blade because it does tend to bend the blade, so just go back and make sure everything's square again when you're done. And now I'm just going to forge a little notch on the very end of the handle, just so that it fits my hand a little better and it makes it look so much better. It's not just blank rebar at the end. So just set your blade on your anvil like this and just hit the very tip. It should kind of look like a half oval when you're done. But yeah, just kind of like this. Make sure it's even with your blade, then you know that your handle's straight, but it just makes it look so much better, in my opinion. And here's the blade after forging. I'm really happy with how it turned out. One thing you could do that I didn't do was, of course, have a smoother anvil face, but just kind of be more careful on the very end when you're making the blade profile, so that you don't have as many cracks and divots as I did. It would just make it look better. And now I'm going to go over the whole thing with a wire wheel on an angle grinder. Really just makes things more shiny, polishes it up, makes it look pretty good. And then I'm going to go over it with a sandpaper wheel on an angle grinder. I'm only going to do that on the blade and on the wedge we made on the very back. On the blade, you could use it to kind of start your blade if it's pretty rough sandpaper, but really just, again, personal preference. But yeah, it really just makes it look a lot better, in my opinion. And here's the blade after grinding. Again, you could have gone in with a smoother faced anvil and got all those cracks out in the forging stages, but it still looks pretty okay in my opinion. But that is something I'm going to try and do next time. And I am not good at explaining grinding and sharpening, so I'm just going to give you a quick montage. And now I'm going to quench the blade. I am using peanut oil, but you can really use any oil, even water. I used water for a long time. You really just want to get it to a cherry red color is what I like to get it to with knives. It really just depends on what you're making. And just be careful, because sometimes when you pull it out of the oil or water, it does tend to catch on fire. So yeah. And now I'm going to check the blade to see if it's hard. You want to use a metal file for this, but you're really just going across the blade, and it should skate across pretty easily and have a really high-pitched squeak, and then go back to a part that you didn't quench, and it should grip onto the metal a lot harder, so it should be harder to push across, and it should have a really low squeaking sound. So that's kind of how you check and see if your metal is hard or not. Now I'm just buffing out the knife, makes it more pretty. These are really expensive, so I wouldn't suggest just going out and getting one if you're just beginning. It does work better if your knife is really smooth, unlike the one I have right now. But yeah, it really just makes it look more pretty. And here's the knife all finished up. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Tell me in the comments if there's anything else you'd like me to make out of rebar. Thank you for watching. Peace out.